On GMS Focus this morning, we'll take a look at the recent AUKUS pact signed by Australia. Now, the security deal with the US and the UK gives Australia a huge defense upgrade in the Asia-Pacific region. However, for leaving another ally, France, in the dark in the lead-up to the deal itself, AUKUS also caused a diplomatic ruckus. For a closer look at the deal itself and its significance, we connect with Professor Kim Byung-ju of Hankuk University of Foreign Studies. Good morning, Professor Kim.
Good morning.
It seems that there is a lot of grounds to cover. So would you mind beginning with the basics? The trilateral security pact between Australia, the UK, and the US, it left Paris angry for pulling out of a major contract with France. What exactly is AUKUS, and how did it come about?
Right. AUKUS, AUKUS, it pretty much speaks for itself, what this is, as you mentioned, the trilateral. Security pact. It's a unique form because, in the sense, the UK is the Atlantic power, and United States is on the other end of the Pacific, and Australia in the Central Pacific. So it kind of covers the if you connect these three countries, it covers the globe. But however, the focus, of course, will be the Pacific area, and name is never mentioned, has never been mentioned, but we know it's about China. Everybody knows it's about China. So basic form is the United States and the UK helping Australia to counter China in the Pacific area. That is the main idea. And the first step is the nuclear-powered submarines. They are talking about at least about 8 nuclear submarines Australia will get to have as a result of this joint efforts, and it'll take years, but still it will move on. And they're talking about not only that, but also cyber capability, cooperations on cyber capabilities, artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is such an important matter for military affairs going forward, so it's included there. And then quantum technologies, high computing power is very important. But of course, for now, setting aside cyber security, artificial intelligence, and quantum aside, nuclear submarine, that is the main focus. As you mentioned, placing this in place or declaring its presence, that happened September 15th. France got really mad about this because they had their deal going on. So it was a surprise in a way. It came as a surprise. Not many people knew about it. Obviously not France. And so interesting move, interesting form of alliance with interesting clear focus on nuclear submarines. By the way, nuclear submarines is an important concept or element in modern defense because, South Korea quite recently tested submarine-launched ballistic missiles, SLBM, and SLBM submarine attack is very important because when you have a nuclear-powered submarines, the enemy have hard time tracing you because you don't come on the surface of the water for a long time. So enemy is most likely to lose your track and then hide your submarine. Nuclear-powered submarine hides somewhere deep in the ocean, and then it emerges and strikes the enemy. And usually that happens in the form of second strike. What it means is that, of course, you can use for first strike, surprise attack, but usually submarine capability is important as a second strike. So let's say China had the intention to attack Australia. Then Australia has this nuclear-powered submarines. China cannot easily attack Australia in that case because you never know how, where in the long coastal lines of China, Australian submarine could emerge and then, launch missiles
harder
into
to
Beijing.
detect, I see.
Exactly. So it's a very credible second strike capability we are talking about when we talk about nuclear-powered submarines. So it's a very significant military step forward when you're talking about defending your country and countering superpower.
So, as far as military weapon goes, it sounds like an effective means to defend Australia in this case. But of course, it did come at a cost. Some experts have called this situation the worst crisis in French-American relations since the 1960s. But as you mentioned, Professor Kim, there's also a bigger player to address in looking at military balance in Asia that has been shifting in China's favor. You're right. No one dropped China as far as name dropping goes, but AUKUS is largely designed to address this growing presence. So how has China responded so far to the AUKUS deal?
We have many reports about China's responses. For instance, Chinese Foreign Affairs Ministry spokesperson Zhao Lijian mentioned that these three countries are engaged in this project, and that means it's gravely undermining regional peace and stability, and it starts arms race, practically, and it goes against the principle of non-proliferation. Non-proliferation, of course, has bearing on North Korea issue, right? Like whereas the United States is trying to stop North Korea from going fully nuclear when the United States helps Australia for nuclear power submarines. China argues that's against that principle. But others will say, well, there's a difference between nuclear bomb on one hand and nuclear powered submarines. There's completely different stuff. If nuclear powered submarine launches nuclear warheads, then it's a problem. But anyway, such debate goes on. But Chinese side, like through the channels like Global Times, which often speaks for government position, they're talking about Australia has now have become full adversary of China, and Australia will pay its price, and then China will punish it with no mercy. Blah blah. All this very very strong
rhetoric.
words,
It seems, yeah,
very strong rhetoric coming out. Even high Chinese party, Communist Party officials said, Australia will be targeted with nuclear weapons and stuff like that. So very, very strong reaction coming out. And last one interesting thing is China suddenly proposed France to work closer in terms of cooperation. So
that cannot be a coincidence, right?
Yeah.
Professor Kim, I'm going to ask you to take us back to France's reaction to the deal itself. Yes, there seems to be a lot of room for cooperation, including quantum technology, AI, cybersecurity, as you've said. But as far as this recent AUKUS deal goes, were the French blindsided by the submarine deal? Can you tell us a little bit more about their reaction?
The report said French was notified through a phone call only a few hours before this announcement. So that's very, very unprecedented. If this is the case, I don't know, maybe the Blinken State Department may be held responsible in not properly managing their alliance system, maybe by U.S. Congress later on, who knows. But the thing is, that's very, very blunt action against a key ally for the United States. But the thing is, on the other hand, you can say, well, this had to happen this way because the result of this action means huge money. We are talking about this submarine deal. This was a diesel-fueled submarine that France was going to help Australia. So Australian side say, well, you guys were going to provide us with diesel fuel, but now we can get the nuclear power, so why should we stick with the old deal? Some of the hawks are saying that in Australia, but
it's not cost effective to have a diesel fuel submarine, not to mention not the most efficient, right?
Exactly. Diesel fuel, it's easily detected. It's noisy and it has fumes and everything. But anyway, the money we are talking about is 56 billion euro. That's about 90 billion Australian dollars. And my calculation, that's about 65 billion US dollars. So in Korean won, over 60 trillion won here. That's a huge money.
Yeah.
So that's enough reason to get quite mad about it. But the other one is, this is kind of like I wouldn't say racial, but cultural heritage-wise, this is Anglo-Saxons working together. See, UK, United States, Australia, Anglo-Saxons working together against French. So that's also quite sensitive right there. So in many different ways, a lot of people wonder whether this had to come this way. even France, as you mentioned, for the first time, you said it's the worst point in terms of diplomatic relationship with Washington now. What that means is they recalled ambassadors to Washington, and then Australia, Canberra as well. They brought back their French ambassadors back home.
Right.
They showed their clear, indication of anger. But then again, it's an interesting happening, and I don't believe this is a critical. I know. Either Macron and Biden has already spoken on the phone and will speak on the phone soon. I think things will be fixed in a prompt manner, the way I see it, but I may be wrong.
That's your prediction, and Professor Kim. All right, then could I ask you to elaborate on that? How do you think the situation will pan out going forward? Will it become the critical bulwark against China's strategic moves in the Indo-Pacific region?
That will be a critical question, and a lot of people will be wondering about it. And it all depends on it will largely depend on how China handles the situation too. Already, this is the third similar mechanism in place now. Quad just had a summit meeting a few days ago in Washington last Friday.
Right.
India, Japan, Australia, and the United States, they had a summit meeting. And Quad is about security alliance. Security alliance includes military, of course, potentially includes military, but for now, this is cybersecurity, coronavirus, public health, on those kind of things. It's a broader, and the AUKUS is more specifically military. And then we have Five Eyes, intelligence, cooperation, and so on. So there are multiple mechanisms of alliance-driven countermeasures against China, but it will take time to see how it goes. For example, Quad's case, India is trying to maintain as much as it can kind of neutral position, not going all the way against China. So it's an issue. And some people have speculated because of India's position in Quad, they had to come up with something additional, and then that's AUKUS. That's speculation. I cannot confirm it. But so the United States is working hard to use alliance to counter China. But how China reacts, how China deals with these countries, for instance, then maybe joining these alliance systems and so on. Recently, I think China had a talk with, I think Xi Jinping had a talk with the head of the states of Vietnam recently. And so China is working hard to build their side. But skeptics say, because of many different issues, China is having a hard time. But if China can succeed projecting itself, more friendly a power, nice and gentle kind of power, it could win. I think you're laughing because there is some sense of, observers saying that may not be possible. That
it seems a little uncharacteristic of China, at least if past is an indication. But
makes good sense. Yep. So that's why. Anyway, so.
All right. Professor Kim, I do wonder, in the China-U.S. tug-of-war, it seems that former U.S. allies and those who have sided with China in the past, they've had to position themselves strategically too. So how would AUKUS affect Korea's interest and also strategic positioning going forward?
Interesting thing is, observers have been noticing that there has been a lot of interaction between Korean president and the head of states of UK and Australia. Because I think a few days ago in New York, when it was last week, I suppose, when President Moon Jae-in was in New York giving speech at United Nations General Assembly, there he had a summit meeting with Boris Johnson, UK, and that people noticed, oh, that's a summit, wow, that's so soon after the G7 meeting recent month, right? And only just about 100 days. So it's a little bit unusual for UK and Korea have this kind of summit encounters twice within like 3 months time.
Right.
And also you may recall there have been reports about UK trying to help South Korea's light aircraft carrier project. So a lot of people were wondering, oh, UK in Korean waters? Interesting, they thought. So this is a heightened level of cooperation. And then Scott Morrison of Australia, Australian Prime Minister, he has met with President Moon Jae-in at G7 summit before. And then Australian foreign and defense ministers visited mid-September, about a week or two ago, here in Seoul as well. So talking about military and security cooperation. So observers notice there is heightened interaction between UK, Australia, and Korea. What does that mean in relation with, the AUKUS? By the way, I think it's today or tomorrow. United States, Korea have a military cooperation meeting here in Seoul as well. So people are noticing something going on here, and of course, the thing is they are trying to relate this to previous story about. This is all speculation, but widely reported in Korean media. That is, Korea wanted to help from the United States in building Korea's own nuclear submarines. We talked about nuclear launched, the submarine launched, ballistic missile earlier, which Korea succeeded on its own. But Korea wanted to get U.S. help in building the nuclear-powered submarines, and then Korean reports say it was rebuffed by United States. United States said no. Yeah. So. Is this a deal making? What's going on? Is the United States has chosen Australia over Korea? Why Australia but not Korea? So a lot of speculations are going on, and so there are all these variables, and Korea's interest and position is in a very, very complicated set. And so how Korea deal with there has been some demand from the United States. We've been hearing asking Korea to join Quad, the alliance of India, Japan, Australia and the United States, and Korea has been hesitant about that, and how Korea may need to adjust its posturing on that and stuff like that. So calculation on our side is getting more and more and more complicated because we have a Quad, Five Eyes, and then the AUKUS in place.
As if it wasn't already complicated enough. Thank you very much, Professor Kim, for clarifying some of the questions we have. I just have a hunch this is probably just one of the many conversations we'll have on this. It seems a very complex web of diplomatic relationships. Thank you very much, and we'll speak to you soon.
Thank you, as always.
If you're listening to our program using the podcast service, just a reminder that we do go live Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Korea Standard Time. So tune in and help us make the show more informative by giving us your input. See you bright and early on Good Morning Seoul.